In one of your conversations with another CEO, the other CEO said risk tolerance is one of the scarcest things we have in companies.
I mean, most people in a company are there to mitigate risk. It's to not spend more than you have to, and not take too big a risk. You take enough risk, but not too big of a risk, because why would you put yourself in the line? You could lose your job. There's a lot of self-preservation in organizations, understandably so. And if you look at them and what they produce, you can tell that they're typically trying to round all the corners. They don't like sharp objects. They don't like sharp, pokey things that could hurt someone or puncture something. And so they soften everything up, and they often run things through lawyers, which is another level of risk mitigation. And it's anathema to me. It's not interesting. I would never want to run an organization that is worried about that. Which is why, as the founder, I've realized it's my job to inject risk into the company, because most people, understandably so, as we just went through, will not inject it. They'll mitigate it. They'll try to eliminate it or manage it as best they can. So it's my job to inject as much as I can, also within reason, but a lot more than everybody else, and to appreciate that is ultimately my role, is to bring new ideas to bear, to throw things at the wall, to try new things. I don't mean damage the walls, but see what sticks, throw new ideas in there and see what happens, and push people to try different things and explore and do some stuff that's kind of weird and unusual in an organization. And I've learned to revel in that position and really enjoy it. I didn't realize that was sort of my job, though, until recently.
And how do you do it? Is it mostly you're coming with the ideas, or you're grabbing the ideas that other people have but are sort of afraid to run with? Which is it, a cultivation thing or a sowing the seed side of thing?
Yeah, I typically am the one who maybe is the catalyst for the primary spark of something, and then of course once you spark, people see the spark, and then they have little sparks of their own, and so I kick things off, and it typically. But people bring all sorts of ideas. We had and sometimes they bring ideas and they don't know they're an idea. So part of my job is to go, wait, that's interesting. Hang on a second. So we just had a meetup, which is what we do twice a year. We bring everybody together. We're a remote company, so we bring everybody together in a city. The last one was in Atlanta, Georgia, here in the U.S. And the design team was just sitting around a table, just kind of hanging out. We don't see each other very often because we're all over the world. And I'm not going to share the exact thing because we're working on it now, but there was this flippant comment about something, oh, it would be funny if we did that. And I was like, you know what? That would be not funny. That'd be good. That'd be interesting and funny. But there's an idea here. Hang on, there's an idea here. There's something here that I think we can develop. And so someone threw that out without the intention of it becoming something, but and this happens all the time, I think, in companies, is people are just talking, and someone's got to grab that out of the ether and bring it and go, wait a second, there's something here. And that's also my job. So in that case, someone didn't bring the idea explicitly, but they said it out loud, and I heard it, and I caught it, and then we bantered it around, and then other ideas came out of that, and now we're actually working on a product based on this ultimately ridiculous idea for, it's not a ridiculous idea, but the genesis of the idea is ultimately ridiculous. like we were talking about that, and that's a product came out of that. Wow, I never would have imagined that. So I enjoy those moments of spontaneity and picking out, sorting through. It's kind of like panning for gold or something, right? You're just kind of like, I've got a bunch of soil and rocks. Oh wait, there's something shiny in there. Let's dig into that and see what that is. I like that process.
And you said that you've only recently sort of realized that's your role. What did you believe your role was before that?
Well, my role has always been coming up with new product ideas and whatnot, but I never thought of them as risk pills or something. These are products. That's what I do. I make up new products, and we work on products, and I, mold the product as we go, and either design it or work with a designer or whatever it is, and we build it. But I always thought of them just as products, and they are products. But actually, what I've realized more is that every new thing we do is a big bet. Mm. So I started thinking in bets more. And when you think in a bet, you think in some people might think in probabilities. I just think about risk. Is this a risky thing? I mean, every bet's kind of risky to some degree. There are no sure bets typically. So these products are bets, and bets are risky. And if I don't bring a lot of these to the table, we tend to just kind of optimize what we have, which is totally fine. We need to do that too, and maintain and improve what we have. Absolutely have to do that. It's a fundamental part of the business. But we also need to keep injecting new ideas. And now I'm just considering those risk, and I like that.
And those new ideas, how much of them has got to do with you going, oh, I'd like that. I would like that. And how much of it is, well, maybe I wouldn't necessarily like that, but other people would like that, so let's do it. What's your sort of, which side of the line are you there?
Yeah, we're basically 100% on building things that we need. So we build the tools that we need to run our business, or the tools that we want to use in our day-to-day work or life. And then our job is to find other people. The bet is that there'll be other people. Okay, the bet is, there's no bet that we can make a great product. We know how to make great products. We're very comfortable making products. We're good at it. We've been doing it for 20 years. Business has been around for 25, but software for 20 years. The bet is, can we find other people like us who like something similar, or have similar struggles, or need something that we need? But the first version of anything that we make is for us and us alone. We don't test it on people. We don't ask other people what they think, because we don't really show it to them. Sometimes in the last few weeks, we start to bring people in early just to kind of make sure it's not broken. But we're not like fishing for feedback or anything like that. We're just like, let's get started. After we launch it out in the market, version 1.0, then of course people have thoughts and approaches that may not totally jive with our initial ideas, and we gather those up and think about them. And the ones that come up often and more often are the ones we tend to give more credence to. And then at some point, the product will diverge a little bit from what we need, because now we have other people using it. Day one, we're the only ones using it, so we make it for us. After that, we've got 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 people or 1 million people. And so then it will evolve over time. But it never starts with imagining what someone else wants, or imagining what someone else needs, or even having someone tell us what they need. Because I don't believe most people have any idea what they really need. They describe something, but they don't necessarily, they only know how to describe it in their own way. So it's limiting. They don't think about software all day. That's not what they think about. They don't think, they have a struggle, and they need to get through the struggle, make progress beyond the struggle. But if they're just suggesting features for that, I'd rather go, well, let me find out more about what you're trying to do, and then we'll come up with something to solve that. And
that's your starting point, where we're trying to do something. So could we make a product that would help us do that thing or achieve that goal?
Yeah, we're not trying to do something. We're already doing something. So everyone's already doing something.
Yep.
So we're already emailing, or we're already managing projects, or we're already doing some CRM-y things. But we're doing them with like a hodgepodge of different tools, or a spreadsheet, or via email or text or chatting, and it's a total disaster because I don't know where anything is anymore. And when it's really small and there's only a few people on day 2 or 3 or 5, it's fine. But then, day 30 with 7 more people involved, it's a total disaster. But we're still doing it because we're making progress, and you kind of make it work until you realize this is not actually a good way to be, a good way to work. This is a mess, in fact, is how it feels at some point. And that's when you go, okay, we can make something better than what we have or what exists. And we have a different point of view. I'm only going to bring products to market that have a different point of view. I'm not going to bring something that's something like something else. There's just no point in us wasting our time doing that, and also the market doesn't need what already exists. Yeah.
Why do you use that term point of view? What do you mean by point of view, as opposed to unique selling position or something like that? I've never heard someone say USP. Point of view. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. The USP or whatever, unique selling position. It's just so corporate and boring. I just can't ever I don't think that way. To me, it's a point of view. I don't know if you've used our email tool called Hey. So HEY.com.
No, I haven't.
It has okay. So it's not a pitch for this, but if you use Gmail and use Hey, you're going to go, oh, Hey has a point of view that is different than Gmail. It's not a different set of features. It's a different point of view about time and what's important and what's worth valuing and what isn't worth valuing. It's just like a philosophy. A philosophy has a point of view. It doesn't have a unique selling position. Mm-hmm. A product is a philosophy. It's a way of working. And so I've always used point of view because that's what everything with an opinion is. It's a point of view, and our products are full of opinions. The opinions that masquerade as features, of course, because ultimately, like, that's kind of, the product has to do something.
Yeah.
But there's always something behind it. It's not like, well, it has to do this because their product does that, and so we need to do what they do. No, we're going to do what we think makes sense from our point of view.
I really like.
Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah.
is
No,
it
it does.
not?
No,
Okay.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, yeah. And I think it's. I mean,
Good.
this unique selling position fundamentally is about just naming the features. I mean, at the end of the day, that's. But what you're talking about there is very different, and I think really.
Yeah,
really
like the
powerful.
USP is like, you can imagine a chart with 2 columns or
Yeah.
something. And like, as long as they're different, then we have a unique selling proposition. Like, that doesn't even, I don't care. Maybe that's true. Who knows? I think that people want to work a certain way. They're looking for guidance. They're looking for a way, whether it's in life, philosophy, business, and software. They're looking for a way, a path. That's a point of view. That's a unique point of view. And that's what we bring.
And where did Hey come from? What was your beef with the Gmail style of email that suddenly you were like, no, that there's a different way, and this is what this looks like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. It came from a lot of different directions, but fundamentally, what bothered me about email was that email used to be something where you'd give out your email address to a few people, and like, they would know it, no one else would, and you'd get emails from people you wanted to get emails from, and it was exciting. It was like, I got a message, just like getting a letter in the mail. Like, this is great. But then email became this thing that's completely out of your control. Your inbox is flooded. You have no control over who can reach you, and therefore no control over who can take your time and attention. Right? Now, there's spam filters and stuff, but a lot of it, you still get tons of email that you don't want to get from people you don't want to hear from that's not spam. And it just started bugging me. It's like, on the phone, people screen their calls, and you don't pick up a phone call maybe from a number you don't recognize or a name, whatever, and you can ignore that. Email doesn't work that way because traditionally email lands in your inbox. It's right in front of you. The email from your doctor that's important is adjacent to the email from Joe Schmo, who you met at some conference and you gave him your email by accident, or somehow someone got it and they're doing a cold outreach or whatever. These things are fundamentally different things, that they land in the same place, and you have to look at them to deal with them, and then you might delete one, but now you're going to get one from the same guy again because he's going to follow up 3 days later if you didn't, whatever. So Hey begins, it's very different in a lot of ways, but it begins with this idea of the screener. The first time anybody ever emails you, you decide if you ever want to hear from that person again. So therefore, you begin to reduce the surface area of people who can touch you, essentially. And so therefore, you're only going to, after time, you're only going to get emails from people you want to hear from.
Yeah.
And you don't have to deal with anything and anyone you don't want to hear from. You say no to somebody, you'll never hear from them again. They don't know that you said no. Their email goes in the ether. It's gone. You never see it. So you begin to take control of your time again, which is completely opposite what like Gmail and Outlook and these other things are, which is like, all about managing your email. I want fewer emails. That's what I want. I don't want better ways to manage more stuff I don't need. I want fewer things. So that's our point of view. And there's a lot of other points of view in the product as well. But that's a fundamental, like, foundational one.
Talk to me about your 6-week planning. So you plan in bunches of 6 weeks, is that correct? And
Yes, it is.
And if it doesn't happen in the 6 weeks, it doesn't happen. Is that? Talk to me about the process.
Yeah, so we invented this process called Shape Up, which is, and if anyone's curious, basecamp.com/shapeup. You can read the book. It's free, completely free online. We don't even ask for your email address. It's like free. Anyway, in this methodology is this idea of the 6-week cycle, which is that we don't allow any individual feature, not a whole product. If we're building a whole product, it's a series of cycles, back to back to back to back to back. But any given feature, like if we're going to improve Basecamp or Hey, no feature can take more than 6 weeks to build, and hopefully it takes less. But nothing can take more than 6 weeks. And what this is about is a fundamental, again, point of view that estimates do not work. People are terrible at estimating time, money, all sorts of things. Terrible. If you've ever renovated your house, you'll know this. It's like you get your estimate for a bathroom renovation. It's $7,000. It turns out to be 14. And you're like, haven't you been doing this? Like, you talk to the contractor, haven't you done like 70,000 of these? Like, yeah, but this one's 14 now. And it was going to take 6 weeks, and now you're on week 12, and you're not even. We all know this experience. Even like getting to the grocery store usually takes 8 minutes. It's going to take 8 minutes. Well, it took 12 today because there's traffic. People are terrible at estimating, and software is the worst. It's very, very hard to estimate how long something's going to take. So instead, what we say is, how much time are we willing to give it? Not how long is it going to take? It'll take as long as you give it. But how much are we willing to give it? So 6 weeks is a limit. It's like a budget. We're only willing to spend 6 weeks on this idea, or 3 weeks, or 2 weeks, or whatever it is that we set up front. Mm-hmm. It's not how long it's going to take. It's how long we're going to give it. And then we have to figure out the 2 or 3 or 6 week version of that thing. So it forces us to really get to the essence and the core of what something actually is, and not get carried away with all the things it could be.
Yes.
And could do. So it's a real exercise in focus, and in efficient working, and in really understanding what it is that we're doing, and not just futzing around staying busy. It's not about being busy.
So let's say you're on week 4 and it's still a great idea, but it has got out of control and you've only got a fortnight to finish it. What happens in that process then? How do you deal with that?
Well, hopefully we don't wait till week 4. Okay, but let's say we are at week 4 and there's some big, what we would call an iceberg that we revealed, which is like, we just ran into something we did not consider at all, and it's a significant technical issue that we're not going to be able to overcome, let's say in 2 weeks. This is what would happen. It's not that like we keep coming with more ideas. We're quite good at that. It's more like we run into a big surprise later in the game, right? Well, what you have to do at that point is basically, first of all, understand the issue and go, is there a simpler way around this? Is there something we can do? Let's not just take for granted that we ran into this iceberg and we have to go through it. Maybe we can navigate around it. Maybe we can melt it down a little bit. Can we cut some scope out? So this thing we thought we needed is the thing that's attached to this iceberg. What if we didn't have that thing? Yeah. You begin to ask different kinds of questions. Not how many more people can we throw at this and how much more time can we throw at this, but what can we begin to eliminate or get clever about to make the last 2 weeks or so really productive so we can get this thing done. And so we'll run into this all the time where we'll have this a big idea and we'll work on it and we'll get somewhere and we'll run into something. Or as we're building it, we realize that this idea, the way we thought about it, wasn't as good as this new version of it that we came up with. It's a slight adjustment or whatever. And so we have to trade some things off. So it's all about trade-offs and figuring out what we're going to lose to gain. Yeah. And so you have to massage it. And the in very few situations is something impossible to simplify. Most things can be dealt with in different ways if you ask the right questions and you're willing to not stick so strictly and rigidly to what you decided earlier. This is also one of the reasons why I like short 6-week cycles as a max versus like planning out the next year. Because the more you invest in the plan, the more sacred the plan becomes. And then, you don't want to break the sacred plan. But if it's 6 weeks, it's like, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. We didn't like spend 9 months planning 6 weeks. We spent like 3 days, 4 days, So I want to keep the investment to a minimum in a sense. So it's easy to break out of the patterns that we already set for ourselves.
And how much of the advantage of that is that if you've only got 6 weeks, it sort of forces you above the project. You start, because it seems to me that a big project, you go down into the weeds of it and you're trapped in the weeds. But in 6 weeks, you've got to come up out of the weeds or else you're doomed every time round. Is that one of the key advantages to it? Yeah, it's kind of like, to use a lens since you injected weeds here, it's kind of like you want to be working with native plants and not invasive species, like. The native plants is what you want to look at. You don't want to look at something and go, oh my God, there's weeds everywhere. Because now you're in trouble. Yeah. Now you're in trouble. You got to cut the weeds out, and you don't want to cut the good stuff. It's like everything gets tangled up, and maybe I've taken this metaphor too far, but you know what I'm saying. So yes, the bigger the project and the more people involved and the longer it's going to take, the more complexity and tangles there are. Things get entangled. And then it becomes harder to make cuts and to trade things off because something is now attached or has morphed or merged into something else. So if you cut one thing, now you're cutting something else. And then it just becomes really, really complicated. Yeah. So shorter, smaller projects with 2 team members. So every piece of software, every feature we do,
typically there's two people involved, one programmer, one designer. That's it. And maybe a project manager, but not a dedicated project manager. This person would be floating across 4 or 5 other products.
Yep.
It's basically two people making decisions. You can move very fast, you trade things off very easily, very quickly, and you don't get stuck in the weeds because you don't have too many people sitting around and too big of a scope to deal with. Because you can always, in my opinion, you're much better off doing 2 6-week back-to-back projects that are related than one 12-week project. That's the mentality. Now you could say, why not do 2 3-week projects to get it? So we've experimented. We found 6 weeks is enough time to get into something meaty and deep, but not so far that you can't see the end of it. You always want to be able to see the end from the beginning. You don't want the horizon to be beyond the curve because then it just like goes forever and ever and ever.
Yeah. Tell me about the importance of writing. I mean, writing is obviously hugely important for you, in obviously personally and with your business. How did that start for you?
Well, I used to hate writing in school. I hated it. Was bad at it. Never was really interested in it because I had to write things I didn't care about. I didn't have anything to say about. And I kind of got into writing when I got into making software because I had to then, and this was back in like high school. I had to, end of high school, early college actually, where I had this software products that I was making for myself and I had to then tell the world about them.
Yeah.
And so I finally got to write something that I wanted to write about something that I was excited about. And then I'm like, I enjoy this writing thing. This is actually quite fun. And that was a nice challenge in a design sense. Like, how do I make this writing tight and concise and clear? And just like hopefully the products are tight and concise and clear and easy to use, so it's easy to read and easy to understand. All these things are, to me, design is writing and writing is design. It's all the same thing. And this just became a thing. And something I got good at. And then my business partner, David's a really, really fantastic writer. And he wrote a lot. And we started hiring good writers because we could relate to great writing and we enjoyed reading great writing. And so that just became a thing. And then because we're a remote company, and it basically have been since the beginning, although we've had some office space over the years, but we've pretty much always worked remotely. Most of our communication was written communication. Mm-hmm. We don't jump on video chats very often. Most of our stuff is written long form, typically writing. Not chat, but mostly long form stuff. And so we found that this is just the best way to do this. And part of the reason why is because we have an asynchronous organization. We have people in 16 countries across probably a dozen time zones. And so real-time communication is just hard, frankly. So it's much easier to write something up, publish it, let someone read it when they wake up or when they get on their time zone or they have time, and they can respond in kind, long form. And this is just the culture that we've built. And I also find that it helps you really think through your thoughts and make sure that what you're saying to somebody else makes sense. Versus, you can I've been in meetings where people just ramble, and hopefully I'm not doing that right now, but people just ramble because you can kind of ramble verbally. But if you're writing something down, you tend not to, or you can ramble, but you tend to have to be coherent and it's a certain sentence structure that makes you think about what you're trying to present, what you're trying to say. I think it's a really good constraint, and actually it liberates creativity. It's a wonderful way to share things because it's so transportable and tight. I don't know. I've always enjoyed it.
So
I've always enjoyed it since I've enjoyed it. I did not enjoy it, like I said before. That wasn't. You know what? When I was writing in school, I wasn't even writing. That was like I don't know what you would call that. I mean, yeah, technically I was writing, but it didn't feel like writing. Now it feels like writing.
Yeah, I mean, is it the difference between, I write a lot as well, and I feel the same about it, and very much I like it when it's written. I'm not sure how much I love the process, but I can't not do it. How much of it has to do with the fact that you obviously write to communicate, and I write to communicate, which is different than writing content or different than just writing on a subject where, which we did all of us did at school. We had to write 1,000 words on something. But I think writing to communicate is a fundamentally different type of thing. And that's the bit I enjoy.
I think that's a great insight. And it is different. It's actually communicating. It's not writing. Maybe that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
It's before I felt like I had to write an essay. Now I get to communicate.
Yeah.
And that's why my writing, at least, tends to be more like I speak. I've always been a bit fascinated by the fact that like we can have a conversation, and then when people sit down to write, well, actually, let me step back. People often say like I don't know, I'm not a good writer, or I don't know how to write things down, or I get writer's block, and then I'll be like, well, let's just talk about it. They have no problem talking about it, but then they can't write it. I'm like, just write what you say then, like even just dictate it out loud. Like that's a great way to get started. Just communicate, just communicate. And don't think so much about, well, now it needs to be really formal and stilted. And I think this is the problem, is that in school, there's all these rules about writing, and it has this formality to it, especially if you go to business school, it's even worse. And it's just not a really fun way to write, versus just write what you think, write what you speak is an approach that I think is particularly useful, especially for people who don't feel like they're good writers.
It's fascinating, though, isn't it? But that is the challenge, isn't it? Because a lot of people, as you say, they feel they can't do that. They're not allowed to do that. And the minute they put pen to paper, they get into this formal sort of language. And I'm a big fan of, if I wouldn't say that word, then don't write that word, even if it's absolutely correct, because then it's not you doing the communicating at that point.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. I don't know. There's this sort of settling into. It's almost like when you sit down to write. For many people, it's like they're now putting on a straitjacket, and like they have to write in this certain way, and they're very limited to how they have to do it, and they have to remember back to how they were taught. Versus just to your point, which is just communicate. We don't have any problem communicating. I mean, some people do, but most people are much better at it. Just communicate, and it just happens to be written down. So it's the words out of your mouth, but on paper instead. Like, do that. Just do that. And I find that to be the best way just to get going, actually. And I tend to write that way almost all the time.
And you said in one of your blogs that if you've got two people you can hire who are technically as good as each other, or as good as each other in every way, pick the one that can write. That's that's incredibly important. Can you talk about that as a concept?
Yeah, for us it is. Actually, when you apply for a job here, we don't look at your CV, really. We look at your cover letter. We require a cover letter. And I know it's kind of old-fashioned in a sense, but to me it's everything, because it's the first introduction to how someone thinks about themselves and thinks about the opportunity. Like if you hand over a CV to somebody, it doesn't say anything about this opportunity. Why you want it. It just says, here's what I've done in the past. And I'm going to give the same damn thing to 60 companies. A cover letter, a good one, well-written cover letter, is written to the company. It's not written and then handed out to 60 companies by changing the company name. It's a personal letter to a company. And it should be different depending on who you're writing it to. Just like any letter you'd write to someone is going to be different, probably considering the audience and who you're writing to. So I want to see a cover letter that has been written to us about why someone wants this job and not just any job, and who they are, and it's a really wonderful introduction to people. And so that's our first filtering criteria, no matter the job. It doesn't matter what job it is, design, programming, customer service, HR, whatever it is. Got to write a great cover letter first. And if you don't do that, you're out. And we probably lose great people that way. I'm sure we pass up people who would be really talented fundamentally at the actual work. But if they don't take the step of communicating about who they are and why they want this job first, and they don't do it in a clear way, I'm just not interested in them, and we just aren't interested in them. So it starts there, and also then at the end it ends there too. If there are two candidates that are, no one's really ever truly equal, but let's say you're really deciding between the two. Everyone has different pros and cons. There's whatever. Like I'm going to lean, and we tend to lean towards the person who's a better writer. Because that skill is used every single day at the company, and it affects everyone else. Bad writing makes people have to repeat themselves. It creates confusion, complexity, clutter. People go down the wrong direction, or they might feel slighted if someone says something in a weird way. Like that causes all sorts of problems. I want to eliminate those as early as we possibly can by finding someone who knows how to communicate with someone else.
It's fascinating when you say that, because it's funny. All that I could think of when you were talking about it is it's like the CV is the unique selling position, but the cover
Yes.
letter is the point of view, which
There you
is
go.
really interesting. And
There
is
you
that
go. Yeah.
go on.
No, it's just it's this. Also, the CVs, frankly, I mean, like they're just exaggerations. I mean, they might be true, but they don't really tell the whole story. They certainly don't tell the whole story, and they don't tell the important parts of the story. So, for example, if I'm hiring a designer and it's like designnike.com or whatever, it's like, no, you didn't. You probably worked on a team. I know, because Nike, whoever works on Nike's site, it's not one person. It's many, 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 many people. I don't know what part of Nike you really worked on. And even if you said that part, like e-com or checkout process, Nike.com, like who else was on that team with you? And what part of it did you do? And did you come up with the ideas, or did you just implement someone else's ideas? Like, I don't know. Now, these are all points of questions. As you get into it with somebody, you can dig into that with them and their history. But what you find is it's like a complete embellishment. It's like an online dating profile. If you look at most people's online dating profile, like their pictures from when they're 10 years younger, and it's not real. None of this is real. It's true, and like that was a picture of me, and this is how I might describe myself, and there's some reality here. And these are the things I've done, perhaps, but like I want to know right now in your writing to us who you are and why you want this job. So like what is your point of view? And sometimes we'll actually explicitly ask for that. Like, give us your point of view on software development or on design or how do you see this field or how do you see this job? That sort of thing.
You have fascinating not interview questions like this, but questions for referees when you're hiring people.
Oh yeah, references.
Yeah. And I went through some of these, and they're fantastic. Do you want to talk about one or two of your favorites?
Oh God.
Because I was amazed at how you go, ooh, that would be a really interesting question to try and answer in terms of developing an understanding about what a potential candidate's going to be like.
Yeah, I know there's that long list I posted, and I'm not sure that I can remember most of them on there. It sort of depends on the situation. The one that I tend to like to ask is I'll usually ask both sides of it, which is like, what does this person think they're good at that they're not? And what is this person better at than they realize?
That's brilliant.
Those kind of things are really good to get at, like really, because what it does is it opens up someone else on the other side to sort of really think about this person in a way that they hadn't previously. And what you end up getting is a lot more than the answer is a lot longer than the question.
Yeah.
And it's a lot richer than the question. The question is just an invitation, really, to riff on somebody. Riff, not rip, but riff on who is this person really? And what are they good at and what are they not so good at? And it also gets to their self-awareness and then you can they think they're really good communicator, but they're actually terrible. They get in arguments with people all the time. Like, that's a good thing for me to know.
Yeah.
So I like those two questions, even though it's kind of the same question with just slightly different words.
Yeah. I love the one where you describe a time when they changed their mind from what to what and what caused the change. I think they're just brilliant questions at getting below the surface of moving away from what they do to how they think about what they do, which is really powerful.
That's what I'm always trying to get at is who is this person and what is their point of view again, and what's beneath the surface? Because I feel like I've got the surface at this point. Like, if we're getting to the references stage, I don't need confirmation of what I already know. I mean, sometimes it's nice to hear that because, like, okay, I picked up on this. I thought this person was this way, and yeah, it sounds like they are that way. That's nice. But really, I want to get some new information at the last minute because typically, depending on the role, I shouldn't say typically, depending on the role, but references can be the final thumb on the scale for somebody if the references are particularly interesting for me. Like, if I get into this question, like, what do you think they're good at that they don't think they are, or whatever, and the answer is really interesting and compelling and positive, like, that could really tip the scales.
Yeah.
So it's at this point I'm looking for the crumbs at the end of that really make a big difference, that flip the scale one way or the other. But yeah, I always want to get into who are they really? What are they going to be like to work with? That's the other thing I like to ask, because you can't ask somebody that question about themselves.
Yes.
So you have to reserve some of these questions. Like references are great because you reserve them for other people. Like, what's it really like to work with this person? What's the best day you had with this person? What's the worst day you had with this person? What's the last argument you had? That kind of stuff. Or when have they ever changed your mind? Has that ever happened? That kind of stuff. So you can also almost ask a reference about themselves too, and get some stories from there.
Yeah, but you said that you're quite comfortable talking to the referees that they provided, but then these questions cut below the surface to actually get to the nub of what that person thinks of them, which I think is immensely powerful.
It's useful. I forget this list. I think I posted on LinkedIn. Maybe I don't know where else I put it, but I should like make it a canonical official list. And I'll publish a page with some of these. So
yeah, they're great. Yeah, I found it on your blog,
Yeah.
and I thought it was
Okay.
It was really brilliant. Talk to me about remote work. So the whole company, there's about 80 of you? Is that about right?
We're about 70 now.
70.
Yep.
And
Yep.
no office space or
Not anymore. We've had office space, but not now. Yep.
And
Not for about 4 years.
Wow. So what was was that COVID that sort of pushed you into no office space?
Yeah, so prior to COVID, we signed a 10-year lease in 2010, and our office space, our lease expired, 10-year lease expired in 2020.
Wow.
Kind of in July, which is like right in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
Now, let me set the stage here, because even though we had an office space, and we had an office space in Chicago, we only had a handful of employees in Chicago. The vast majority of our company was outside of Chicago. So we've always been a remote company, even though we had like a headquarters in the city where most people, or not most people, but the most people in an individual city were, which was Chicago. Maybe a dozen at the height, something like that. So the office was always optional. It was just a place. And it was a place we could bring the whole company together when we were a bit smaller and have meetups, in the same office, twice a year and that whole thing. COVID happened, lease was up. Do we want to renew? At that time, we were thinking about renewing. Actually, I was negotiating with the landlord a little bit, but the price had gone up considerably. When we moved in that neighborhood, it was kind of garbage. And then by the time we left, it was really like the best neighborhood in Chicago for businesses. So rent went way up. We didn't know what this COVID thing was going to be. It just made sense to say, let's just go fully remote. We're kind of remote anyway. Like in any given day, there's like 3 people in the office. It just wasn't, we didn't need to spend that kind of money. So we decided to go fully remote, and we've been that way. But it wasn't a change for us because, as I mentioned before, we've been around for 25 years. So before the office there, we were borrowing a few desks from someone else's office. And then before that, we had a tiny little office, and then we had no office. So we're very used to working remotely. Basecamp, the product, is built for that purpose. Yeah. And even if we're working in the same office space, we would use Basecamp as if we were not together. We would not have personal meetings. We would not get together. The office was a place to sit and work, but it wasn't actually a place to socialize very much.
So what do you say to people who say that, no, you got to get everyone back in the office. Obviously you were, the company was like that from the beginning as a concept that you could work remotely. But what do you say to all the arguments against it that we've heard, particularly once COVID died down?
I think every company's got to figure this out for themselves. I mean, some certainly make a lot more sense. Like if you're building something in a factory, of course you need to be there. And I can understand if you're building something in a factory, everyone in the factory floor has to be there, but the executives can work from home. That doesn't send a good message either. So I think there's some consideration to make in those situations. But every company's got to figure it out. I just think like remote work is also used as a scapegoat. Like when things aren't going well, it's like, well, we all need to get back in the office and things will go well. I just don't think that that's actually the case. I do think there's certain cultures that are very, very in-person driven and other ones that are very, very flexible. I wouldn't tell anyone they have to do one or the other. We are remote just because we are. But as far as other companies go, like you should figure out what works well for you. What I don't think works, though, actually is hybrid. I don't actually think it works very well. Where people are required to be in an office, let's say 2 days a week, and they get to work from home 3 days a week. Because to me, that's not remote work. Remote work is you should be able to live anywhere you'd like. You shouldn't have to feel tethered to a city because an office space is there. But if you have to come in twice a week, it's more like just work from home a couple days a week, but you're still fixed and locked into and tied to a city or a location because you have to commute. And I just think that it's kind of a mess. And then some people are there some days, not other days. And so you don't know what to expect when you get to the office. And there's some in-person work, but the expectations are off. I don't know. I think you should go all in or all out. I don't really like the hybrid approach very much.
And how do you manage the downsides of remote work in terms of, if someone's not feeling part of the team? Do you solve that by avoiding the hybrid, that kind of, because everyone's remote, everyone is equal in that sense? Is that a plus in that sense?
Partially. I think not that you're assuming this or not that you're insinuating this, but like there are problems with in-person work too. Like every method of working has issues. So remote work solves a lot of the problems that in-person work has, and in-person work can solve some of the problems that remote work has. So we're just trading problems around. I don't think there's more or less. There's just different ones. So remote work can be isolating for some who really need human contact, and one way to do that is to like go work at a co-working space or coffee shop or something like that. If they need to be around their coworkers specifically, that's going to be very hard to do in a remote organization. So maybe remote isn't for you if that's what you absolutely need. And there's people who absolutely do need that. But as far as feeling part of the team, to me, it's all about people feel part of a team when they feel valuable. And it's not like you're part of the team because I can see you physically. Yes. That doesn't make you, that makes you there, but it doesn't make you feel part of a team if you're still not like doing anything valuable. So I think it's about giving people meaningful work, giving them a lot of agency and autonomy over the work, working in small teams where you're really valued. And if you're missing, it's very obvious. If you have a team of 2 and the designer's missing, there's no design happening. If you're on a team of 18 and there's 9 designers and you're out for the day and there's 8 designers, like you don't feel that valuable. So to me, it's more about smaller teams make people feel more valuable, actually, regardless of where they are. As far as like the cultural side of it, there's lots of things you can do to like make sure people feel like they know each other. You can do this. People have friends they haven't seen in 10 years. Like people figured out how to know people they don't know. Yeah. Personally, or in person, I should say. So we're all pretty comfortable, I think, having relationships with people we've never met or we don't get to see very often. So I think that's sort of gone away. Anyway, that's my general thing. But yeah, there's different problems to deal with. You just got to deal with them in different ways. Do
you remember the first time you realized you could hire anyone, regardless of where they were?
Yeah. So, my business partner, David Hannemeyer Hansen, is from Denmark. And David and I worked together for a number of years without ever meeting each other. Before we even, I think it'd been a couple of years before we even met, but we'd worked together remotely. It's like no problem. It was totally fine. And then the first person we ever hired remotely was this guy named Jameis Buck. And Jameis lived in Utah at the time. And he was an exceptionally good programmer. David had met virtually as well. And we're like, yeah, let's just hire him. Great. Worked great. Like everything just worked because we had great people focused on simple things that we were working on together, a small team. And it was I remember I think he was at BYU University, that's what the U stands for. So Brigham Young University, prior. And he was in a big, bureaucratic environment, and like it's just hard to do anything because he's just part of a massive machine. And then he got to come here, and it's like there's 4 of us or 5 of us at the time, and like, what do you do all day? You program all day. There's no meetings. There's no administrative BS. There's no permission to ask from anybody. You just get to do the craft. You get to do the work, and we just want people who want to do the work, who are looking for a respite, looking for an escape from not do it, but going to work and not doing the work, to actually going to work and doing the work. That's who we're looking for, and those people are everywhere, and it's wonderful to be able to find them when we do.
And is that? I mean, it seems to me that it sort of all comes together to create this sort of meeting-free zone. Is it like the 6 weeks, the 2-person teams, the fact that it's remote, that all comes together in a sort of a harmony that you can Is that how you avoid the meetings? You avoid the meetings, but you got the two people teams, and you break it into a feature, and you have 6 weeks to make that work. And you don't really need meetings for the 6 weeks, except to deal with all
No.
the stuff you're talking about. Of going, well, hang on, let's just get out of the weeds again.
Yeah, I mean, two people, they'll catch up as often as they need to. So, but I don't consider two people talking a meeting. That's just a conversation between two human beings, right? So there's not like 7 people. There's no reason ever. Sometimes there's 3. Like sometimes we'll have a Zoom call and it'll be the 2 people on the team and me, or Brian, who's like me at our company, who like oversees projects, and we'll do a review of the work that's going on. Like there'll be something like that. That doesn't feel like a meeting either. It's actually like a practical review of work. We're looking at something real and we're working something out. We're not discussing what we're going to do. There's no discussion about what we're going to do. That all happens asynchronously in Basecamp, or through very, very small, quick conversations that last 4 minutes, or something like that. So there's no, and we don't mix departments. There's no very, very few dependencies or interdependencies. Most things can, the way we think about it is don't grind, but glide. So don't build things that require 3 other teams to do something for you. Because that starts to grind the gears, and you get locked up and you can't make forward progress, and you're waiting on someone else. And we just try to avoid there's all these things we avoid so we don't fall into the trap of the typical corporate solution, which is, well, let's just meet about it. Let's just meet about it. We just do the work and have short conversations amongst 2 people, or maybe 3 occasionally, like a couple times a project. There's like a call with 3 people on it. It's enough. It's just enough. And then in the company, we also like write up every team lead at the end of 6 weeks writes up everything that their team, the team might be 7 or 8 people, like design team or programmer team or whatever, has worked on collectively. So there's these beautiful things, we call them heartbeats. They're beautiful, long form, could be 2,000 words, more, something like that. Detail about what everyone did, so no one has to ask. There's no status meetings like, what are we doing, what are we working on? Then also every 6 weeks the team lead writes a kickoff, which is, here's what we're planning on doing over the next 6 weeks or next 3 weeks, whatever it is, next cycle we call it. And so you get a sense of this cadence of like, what are we planning on doing, what do we do, what do we plan on doing, what do we do? And it's all written up in long form. So there's now a library, there's a history and institutional knowledge of what we've done and how we've thought about it and what we've considered, and it's all there. And one of the beautiful things about this is that new employees can come into the company, go to one project in Basecamp, which is called the What Works project, and they can read back all the kickoffs and heartbeats for the year, and there's different versions of that project for different years, and get up to speed by essentially reading in other people's words what we've been working on as a company. You couldn't do this if you were a meetings-heavy culture. All that stuff would be lost. It's gone, or it'd be in transcripts, which no one's going to read because the transcripts are hard to follow. Or if there's like videos recorded, no one's going to watch 200 hours of footage.
Yeah.
But you'll read 2,000 words here and there and get up to speed. It's a wonderful way to get new people into the company and understand how we work and how we communicate. And then that sets the example. So one of the things we don't also have here are like style guides. There's no written style guide or design guide. Like the product is the guide. The way we communicate is the guide. The actual stuff is the stuff that you look at if you want to know how to do that stuff here. You don't look to a manual for how to do that. You look at the stuff itself and go, yeah, I'll do more stuff like that stuff.
And that's because it's the personification of the point of view that you're trying to get across, and that becomes direct and straightforward. It's
the output and the evidence of it. You can have a point of view and then not follow it. Like the output is ultimately the truth. Not like it's right or wrong in a sense, but it's like what you did. So like what you actually did, what's written down is what you did. And that becomes the point of view. That also becomes the culture. Like it just becomes everything essentially, because it's the written record of activity and action, and not of plans. There are some plans in there, but every 6 weeks they're like we actually then follow up those plans with what did we actually do. That's what the heartbeat is.
Yep. And just to finish, Jason.
Yep.
After 25 years of doing this sort of thing, what's the most surprising thing you've learned about yourself?
Surprising thing I've learned about myself. Well, I'll just put it this way. I thought I would always be good at certain things. I'm no longer good at some of those things. And now I'm good at other things. So, for example, when we first started the business, I did like all the design work myself, all the HTML, all the CSS, all the visual design, all of that for a number of years. And then over the past handful of years, I've not done that as much. I've sort of dictated direction and worked more as like a design editor with other people who are doing the design work. And that's something I never imagined I would do. I never imagined I would get my hands a little bit out of it. I'm in it in other ways, but out of it in that way. And that sort of surprised me. And the other thing I've learned about that, which is a good thing to learn and know, is that like skills atrophy if you don't use them. You don't get to keep those forever. Maybe riding a bike, you don't forget how, but I am very rusty with things that I used to be very sharp at. Yet now I'm very, very sharp at things I couldn't have done before. And I would say finally, like the fact that I'm still here 25 years later doing this is a big surprise. I'd never had long-term plans, so I never knew where this would go. And that's been a real interesting thing to see that we're still at it and still having a good time with it. So I just turned 50. I never imagined that, I'd never imagined I'd be 50 doing this or whatever. And I don't know, and here I am still doing it. So there's some of that. I don't know if that's introspective enough or reflective enough, but it's a great question. I should think about that some more.
No, I think it is, because it is one of those things that when you do start off, you think there's so many things that are going to be so important. And I think I've learned that I was wrong about a lot of those things, and I've ended up having to get good at things that I never thought I would be good at or would matter. And that's fascinating.
I love that. There's actually one of my favorite songs. There's a song Tom Petty wrote, and one of the lyrics is, most of the things you worry about never happen anyway.
Yeah.
And that's something that's also I've realized is true, is you can sweat so many details and so many things, and some things are worth sweating, but much of the sweat that you shed would have been better off not being sweat. Like there's a lot of stuff you spend a lot of time on that simply does not matter. Yes. And getting better at that is really, I think, probably the primary skill that you should be developing, is figuring out what not to do. Not what to do, but what not to do. That is very important. I've gotten good at that, but sometimes it takes a while.
Jason Fried, absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, likewise. This is wonderful. Thanks for having me on.